Welcome to the show. Today is January 21st, 2023. Let me start by saying I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is, of course, intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. I am not a legal advisor either, and this is not legal advice. So, today we'll be talking about what used to be stock symbol MMTLP and which is now the private company NextBridge Hydrocarbons. I have not made a video in a while, and we have a lot to go over this week. Traditionally, this is when I point to my previous videos and tell you that I'm not going to go over this info, and it's up to you to check out the information yourself if you have no idea what I'm talking about. However, we have two new videos that are out by John Brda, where he explains the situation in much better detail than I can. And he gives you a lot of info about the shorting that's taken place. His story is really good and it's well worth watching, so I'm going to plug his video. In this first video over here, he talks to the Marine Activist channel, and he tells the story in his own words there. It's a pretty good story. It's about just under 40 minutes or so. It's well worth watching. He also tells a story to Roger James Hamilton, and that's more of an interview style Q&A format video, and I would recommend that one as well too. Generally, both have about the same amount of info. There might be a little bit more in the Roger James Hamilton interview. I'm not sure. They're both excellent videos. I highly recommend watching those, okay? I learned a lot myself. So there was some info in there that I did not know before that I found out about. Anyway, I'm also going to plug my video, which is what I used to talk about. If you want, you can see what my take on this whole thing was several months ago. And this is what I used to say is going on with MMTLP, and this is why I got into the stock and why I believe the overall story about it. In general, quick overview, there's about 3.2 billion barrels of oil in the ground in West Texas near El Paso, and there was a bunch of shorts who basically shorted the company out the wazoo, which had discovered this 3.2 billion barrels of oil and wanted to bring it to the market. So there has been some activity on my Twitter space. Hello, by the way. There's been some activity on my Twitter space, and let me go over that. Thank you to Liz Hoffman. She gave me a new icon, which is based upon the MMTLP icon that everyone's been using, and it's also got the old T with the tweeter bird on it that was done by Roller Pigeons. Thank you, Roller Pigeons. Always appreciated that. So that's a new icon that Liz Hoffman came up with, and I think it's great. I like the old icon, of course, as well too, and it incorporates that. So this is now my new Twitter banner. Now, you may be asking, what's this whole thing about the Twitter banner about? Well, let me break that down for you as well too. This is what the Twitter banner is in detail, or where it comes from. And if we break down the Twitter banner, we'll see that this part is basically the entire stock history, of stock symbol MMTLP, and which started trading around 10/8 of 2021, or October 8th of 2021. Or was it October 7th? I forget. October 7th, October 8th time frame of 2021. That's when it started trading, and this is the entire history of it. As you can see, it's been mostly flat for most of the trading history, almost as though someone were controlling the price. And then around the 10/4 area of 2022, something changed. Shorts decided that, hey, look, we better not be in this position because we might get screwed, because the company announced that they were going private sometime around July timeframe, early July timeframe here. And it took shorts a while to figure out what's going on about the stuff that the company might be going private, and we started seeing massive price action moving up on MMTLP. And finally, the last day of trading, shorts slammed the stock symbol down to the ground. They brought the price all the way down from $7 down to $2.89 where it closed, and then FINRA halted the trade. That's why this, you see this little flat line here. FINRA halted the trading of this stock, okay? Because they said that there could be a problem with settlement and clearance. I think that there's actually a problem with I think there is a problem with settlement and clearance, and I think it's because of the fact that is a lot more stock out there than has been issued. I think there's been a lot of shorting. I think there's been a lot of naked shorting. And as you know, you can't short and naked short into a private company. So this is my estimate of how much shares are out there. This is based upon Russ Race's survey that he's done on Twitter to see how many shares there were. I've just put them into a spreadsheet. 39 million shares were counted across 6,000 shareholders. Stick the numbers in, and you get about something in the range of 424 million shares. That's without any outliers. Throw in the known outliers that we have of Greg McCabe, William Stewart, David, and John Brda, and we have something like 51 million shares that we add back in. That brings us to about 475 million total estimated MMTLP shares, of which there were only 165 million issued. So therefore, we have about 300 million shares in excess. These are the short shares. I think there's at least 300 million short shares out there. Could be more. This is a conservative estimate. This is using Russ Race's numbers. We're not counting any outliers except for the 4 that I mentioned. So the actual number of shares out there, it might be higher than this, but I'm thinking it's at least 475 million. It's at least 475 million shares. And that's where that comes from. If we break down how this is calculated, we got 39 million shares, 6,000 shareholders. It's about 6,500 shares per shareholder. We know that there are about 65,000 shareholders. That brings us to 424 million shares that are circulating just from the average person. And if we throw in the outliers that we know about, Greg McCabe, Will Stewart, David, and John Burda, we got about 51 million. Add that in there. Again, and we get something like 475 million shares, of which there's only been 165 million shares issued. So there's at least 260 million shares out there. In excess of that, that's basically 2 shares almost of synthetics for every single share that was issued. Only 165 million shares were issued. There's almost 260 million. There's almost 260 million excess shares out there, and that has a depressive effect on the price. These shares have to be closed out when the company goes private. FINRA is aware of this, and FINRA said, they had an OS moment or an AF moment, and they said, we're going to call a U3 halt. And that's what happened. Okay. So that's where we're coming from. And that's what I think. That's where I think things are coming from. Let me give you a quick breakdown of what's been happening on in the week, starting from most important to least important, I think. This was the most important thing I believe that's been happening this week, is that we know that Roger James Hamilton has gotten together with John Brda, and he did an interview where they talked about naked short selling. And this interview is available on YouTube. Why is Roger James Hamilton important? Well, he's got about 180 million. He's got about 180,000 subscribers on YouTube. And if you look further, if you look at him on Twitter, he's got about almost 1 million followers on Twitter. He is a futurist and CEO of GNS. That's Genius. And that's a different company entirely. But that company has been shorted out the wazoo. And he brings a lot of he brings a lot of eyes on this now. Now we have a much bigger audience. We have a much louder voice because we have a much bigger audience. And word is getting out about MMTLP and naked shorting. So this is starting to hit the news cycles. The full interview is available on YouTube. It's a story of Torchlight Energy. He talks about the metamaterials. He talks about the merger with metamaterials, how the Series A preferred shares were issued when MMTLP starts trading. He talks about NextBridge Hydrocarbons and the spin-out. It is well worth watching. Just some highlights of what I found out about this was some info that recently came out. It turned out that just a few days before the U3 halt, it turned out FINRA issued the corporate action notice, and it was a wrong corporate action notice. I was pretty much, it didn't make, it had issues with it. Let's just say the least. It had issues with it regarding the dates. And John Brda was, of course, aware of the issues. Metamaterials was aware of the issues. And even the DTCC was aware of the issues. And so they didn't agree with the notice that FINRA came up with. So what happened? They wanted to call a meeting. And The DTCC just said, "Hey, look, this notice you issued is wrong. We're not going to give this notice to broker dealers." So the DTCC calls a meeting with FINRA and Metamaterials. Metamaterials shows up. The DTCC is there. Does FINRA show up? No, they do not. They do not show up. This is brand new information to me. I did not know this. FINRA did not show up at the meeting. Instead, they went off and issued their own U3 halt. So what? WTF, man. FINRA says, we don't agree with anything that you guys are doing. We don't care what you guys are doing. They're going off like a loose cannon on their own. And, FINRA, I think, it could be that they don't want to disclose the scale of the short interest problem. They know that there's a big short interest problem. They don't want to know the scale of it, and that's a big deal. The other info that's actually coming out is the stuff about Share Intel. Now, Share Intel, turns out Share Intel does analytics of stock, and they can tell you how much naked shorting has been going on, what the real short interest is, how all the stuff works out. And these interviews with Roger James Hamilton and with the marine activist give you the inside scoop on that. I highly, highly, highly recommend you check out these videos. They are awesome. They had information. If you have not seen them before, of course. If you've seen them before, you know what I'm talking about. If you have not seen them before, check them out because they have brand new information that as far as I'm concerned, is brand new to me, at least, about what's going on behind the scenes there. And, one of the things that came out in this is that there was about 50 million shares short that John Brda was aware of that is going into, that came out of the merger with NextBridge Hydrocarbons. There's about 50 million short sellers that were unable to close their position. There was some speculation as to whether or not those shorts were able to or were not able to. I think that speculation has come to an end now because John Brda basically says, "Hey, look," he knows of the fact that there's at least one entity who wanted 25 million shares and was unable to get any. So there's a lot of people. These videos are well worth watching. Check them out. Enough to say about that. Earlier in the week, there was a video that was also done, again, by Roger James Hamilton and Wes Christensen. Okay, Wes Christian, I'm bad at pronunciation. Wes Christian is an expert in what's the word he's an expert in lawsuits against naked shorting. Okay, he's done a ton of stuff. He's got a lot of experience in the matter. He knows what he's talking about. And basically, the really interesting thing is that Wes Christian believes that the mother lode of naked shorts can be found in stock symbol MMTLP, and he also believes it's an open and shut case. He believes that this case has all the info out there, that it can be easily resolved, quickly resolved. That brings a large amount of credibility. And if you didn't know that it was so open and shut, he's another person who tells you that it's open and shut. But where he comes from, he didn't know anything about metamaterials and NextBridge Hydrocarbons apart from just a few days ago. He looked at the data and the info and he said, "This is so blatantly obvious that it needs to be resolved." That he doesn't see why it can't be resolved quickly because it's so beyond obvious, right? Anyway, he brings that info into the table, and it's pretty cool. He thinks it's the mother lode of all naked short shares. Okay, and the other news that's come out is that John Brda has gotten together with Roger James Hamilton and some other CEOs to form CEO Block, and this is an organization that is fighting naked short selling and abusive trading practices. It says, so if you look at them, they are putting an end to naked shorting. Okay, great. This is a big deal. We are an activist block of public CEOs, executives, and shareholders committed to putting an end to naked short selling and other abusive trading practices. This is the kind of thing that we need. This is brand new. This has never happened before. This is awesome. This is excellent. This is massive progress forward. Okay. Now, along the way, with all of this stuff going along the way, Charles V. Payne, of course, he says, let's do it again. And he interviews Roger Hamilton. And they talk about what do they talk about? They talk about naked shorting, but they also bring up MMTLP. This is getting into the news cycle. This is getting around, okay? It's becoming obvious to everyone why, what is going on. So because of all this light that John Hamilton is putting on the situation, my initial thought was, I like this guy. I can't help it. I like this guy. I like him for purely personal reasons, that I think what he's doing is a great job. I have no idea what his company is, but I know he's got about 1 million followers almost. I was thinking, gee, wouldn't it be nice? He's CEO of GNS. After stock symbol MMTLP takes off, I was thinking about picking up some shares. I said, hey, look, just as a thank you, I have no idea if his company's any good or not or what. Having done zero research on it. But I said to myself, I like this guy. This guy has, I can't help it. I just do. Okay? So I started looking at the stock and I was thinking, hey, look, the next play after MMTLP, I'm going to pick up some of this guy's stock. That's what I was thinking. Again, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only, right? Again, definitely, that was definitely not financial advice. I was just thinking of picking it up as a thank you to Roger James Hamilton for shedding light on the MMTLP situation. And what do I find? Tons of people were thinking the same exact thing as me, but they said, hey, look, we're going to buy the stock anyway. And you saw massive volume on Genius Group, right, which is, of course, the company that the Roger James Hamilton runs, he's CEO of. You look at this, the stock price has skyrocketed. It's up in after hours. I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's gone up a lot, right? What is it? This says it's gone up 55% the last day. In the last 2 days, it went up dramatically just because of what was going on. But the thing is, when you look at this volume is gigantic, right? This volume is huge. You can't even see the other volume before it. This volume is so big, right? And again, the volume is enormous, gigantic. There's only about 10 million shares of the stock out there, or 14 million shares. I forget if it was 10 million or 14. It's a very small number of shares of Genius Group. But yet, look at the volume that traded. The volume of shares that traded is this is insane. 231 million shares of volume the last day. I mean, on Friday. Okay. The average volume is 52 million shares of volume. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that normally there's a lot less volume that trades every single day. It's only about 10 million. There's a lot less volume. It's insane. This price should have gone up a hell of a lot more based on just this volume alone than $3 to 24 cents. Right? It should ended a lot higher than 324. It came down here, and it went as high as $5. $5 on Friday. Okay, what does that say to me? It says to me that there's a lot of naked shorting going on in this stock. Although there's a ton of buying, there's so much naked shorting it suppressed the price. You may not think this is price suppression. You may think the price is skyrocketing here, but this is the price skyrocketing, but it's being suppressed dramatically. This price should have got easily up to $30, $40 with this much volume. Just think about it, this much volume. There was a ton of market makers naked shorting these shares out the wazoo. So be careful with this, okay? Do I still, now, if MMTLP takes off, I will have made a lot of money and I will still wind up buying this Genius brand stock, probably without even knowing hide nor tail of it, just because I like Roger James Hamilton. Okay, what he's done, I'd like to be able to say I own this stock just as a thank you to Roger James Hamilton, but he doesn't need my thanks. He's doing quite well enough as it is. In any case, he made a tweet about the volume. He said 124 million Genius shares were sold short yesterday. Either the clever shorters kept borrowing our 10 million share float, buying back higher and repeating every 30 minutes, or there's a ton of naked shorting going on. They know we're watching. They can't help themselves. And it's true. They can't help themselves. This is what's going on with naked shorting. Total reported volume, 227 million shares. I didn't even know what the naked shorting volume was when I looked at that. I just looked at the volume. But there's easily, right? I mean, just look at 124 million shares. And insane. And not that many shares exist. It's beyond belief. Anyway, so that's what's going on. That's why Roger James Hamilton is fighting this. He knows there's a ton of naked shorts out there. They are underwater at this point, I'm sure. and they will be underwater some more. Now, what's back to MMTLP? What's going on with MMTLP? This was some of the most exciting news that came out with MMTLP, right? This says, news of the day, not the best kept secret, but see below. What are we referring to? We're referring to this letter that comes out from Warshaw, Burstein, Christian, Levine Law Group, retained by shareholder group to investigate market manipulation scheme. That's what this is. That's what's going on here. So, Warshaw, Burstein, LLP, full service law firm in New York City. Okay. Today announced that along with Christian Levine Law Group, Christian Levine Law Group, by the way, is Wes Christian's law group, and several industry consulting experts. we think that those several industry consulting experts include ShareInfo. So ShareInfo is going to be doing a deep dive into this. Has been retained by Flamethrower LLC to investigate whether tens of thousands of unsuspecting investors were fraudulently sold hundreds of millions of phantom shares of NextBridge Hydrocarbons by market makers, broker-dealers, and other third parties. Okay. That's a big deal here. That's what we're talking about. Okay. And they have other info in here. And they even talk about Flamethrower. Flamethrower is a consortium of shareholders committed to investigating and prosecuting every company or individual who engaged in a market manipulation scheme that targeted these companies and will seek to hold them financially liable for their unlawful conduct. And Flamethrower is basically, if we look at who Flamethrower... So, by the way, this is Christian Levine Law Group. And if we look at Christian Levine Law Group, we can see that this is, of course, Wes Christian. And they're operating out of Dallas. They're actually adding more lawyers. Flamethrower, according to John Brda, is John Burda and three other OG Torch folks. I'm suspecting one of them is Greg McCabe, of course, because he is an OG Torch person. That should be kind of obvious. And we'll go where the due diligence takes us and make appropriate decisions once we have the data. So they're getting the data together. Where are they getting the data from? I'm thinking that must be ShareInfo. Now, John Brda has a lot of data that was available to him as well, too. So he knows where the answers are going to come up anyway. But to get the actual data that that you can take action with, bring that to a court case or whatever, they need to get the stuff from ShareInfo. So there you go. And so again, ShareInfo. If we look at ShareIntel. If we look at ShareIntel's website, they say stop abusive short selling, and they will aggregate, analyze, archive, and alert about all the naked shorting that's going on. They do an excellent job. They've been spoken about again and again by John Brda, and I believe he's going to finally pull the trigger and check them out. He's going to have that. I think he's engaging in their services, and that would be good. So next, let's talk about what else is going on. We have the Marine Activist channel. I mentioned the Marine Activist earlier. He's interviewed John Brda, but he's doing this thing called, what is he doing? He's doing Mass Awareness Days, MAD, January 27th and 28th. What is Mass Awareness Days? It's taking place at multiple cities, including Washington, D.C., okay? It's taking it at the cities where there are SEC headquarters, right? Where the SEC has branch offices located, and it's taking place outside the SEC headquarters, okay? MAD, Mass Awareness Days, 1/27 and the 28th. It is happening outside the SEC building. In this case, here's a permit for the one in Washington, D.C. that's been approved. They're going to go in Houston and various other places, okay? The idea is that there would be mass demonstrations outside the SEC, okay, and mass demonstrations about FINRA and what's been going on. So this is excellent. This is going to bring a ton of awareness into the general news media. The news media will have no choice but to cover this because, of course, the massive demonstrations here, right? So what kind of stuff is going on? This is the permit for the Washington, D.C., of course. And as we can see, it's been signed off. It's completely approved. When there's massive protests happening outside the SEC in Washington, D.C. You can bet the news media is going to be looking at that. But as we saw, this is the marine activist. He's got a Twitter account, of course, and he talks about his interview with John Brda. And again, John Brda tells the entire stories from the torch days. He tells about how he first discovered about short attacks and how the shorts operated. He tells you about offshoring of short interest. He tells you about the merger of metamaterials, why they decided to merge with metamaterials. He talks to you about, various short hedge funds who wanted to buy shares directly from Torchlight. And basically, John Brda was able to catch that. And, he tells you where he comes from, right? He's a capital markets guy. So he's not just a pure oil guy. He understands capital markets and how they work, and how to raise money. And that's a big deal, right? As John Brda likes to say, which I think is a genius statement, a bad well is not going to destroy the company, right? But a bad financing deal could destroy the company. So that's what's good to know about. Anyway, he talks about how he did not sell any shares to what were known short hedge funds. He talks about how he discovered, documents from the OCC about how, and the OCC, by the way, has to do with options, the Options Clearing Corporation, and how they were planning to get around the Series A preferred shares. Okay, right? He talks about the S1 filings, FINRA, the DTCC, everything. This is, again, an excellent interview. A lot of this info is also in the interview with Roger James Hamilton, but it's a slightly different take on it. But a lot of the info is there. Some info, there's no overlap, so just check it out. I think it's well worth watching. It's a fascinating story. I had no idea that there was that much stuff going on. It also, I'm actually much more impressed with John Brda once I've heard this story, because a lot of the stuff he could not talk about because, again, he had a gag order because he was CEO. Now that he's not CEO anymore, now that he's in private citizen, he's able to talk about this, I think. So this is really cool. He actually, he quit his advisory position with metamaterials and NextBridge Hydrocarbons in order just so that he could have freedom of speech, and was able to tell you and I and all the shareholders about it. So thank you, John Brda, for doing that. Yeah. So there you go. Anyway, these mass awareness days are taking place on the 27th and the 28th. The SEC will be going to the office on the 27th. It is a work day, of course. The 28th is a Saturday, so the SEC will likely not be at the office, of course. But the other interesting thing is that we have Ham Short Killer. Ham Short Killer said he's going to bring the truck. What is a truck? The truck is this thing. The truck is a rolling box media, and if we look at the truck has these video screens attached to them where he can display large messages. He can display, he can probably put a live video feed on there. I don't know if it looks like they have sound on this truck. I don't know. It looks like they have speakers here. It could be very interesting to bring the truck. I think the truck is awesome. And this might provide a soundbite for news media to quickly get the info as to what's going on. Anyway, this is what Ham Short Killer has to say. He thinks that MMTLP, he says, with regard to MMTLP, relax, it's an easy case. He thinks it's so open and shut that, that you don't have to worry. Again, he did not know about MMTLP until just recently, but once he found out about it and what FINRA did, said, hey, this is so blatantly obvious. There's no way this could go wrong against you. But I basically like to not count my chickens before they're hatched, of course. But again, another voice that says it's so blatantly obvious, right? So blatantly obvious. And we need things to be blatantly obvious, because that's the only way the news media will get we'll actually get to the story. We saw earlier in the week that there was a story that Investor Place put out, and they got all the obvious facts wrong. So you need the news media. You need a truck like this, because sometimes the Investor Place and news media like that get everything wrong. But John Brda corrected them, and then they were forced to issue a correction. Of course, their initial article, which had all the facts wrong, gets seen by 10,000 plus people. or 10,000 plus views, and their correction, of course, gets seen by, I don't know, what, 100 people, 200 people. That's the way these things work, right? Anyway, so ham short killer. He says, Longs, let's say someone very powerful, strapped like you. They reach out to their friends, who are now your friends. Get it? FINRA is the target. And what does he mean by this? I think he means this. If we look at Trading Secrets, he says, a congressional subpoena is an official request by either House or Committee of Congress which compels production of documents or testimony. Are you ready, FINRA? Are you ready, FINRA? I believe Ham Short Killer actually talked about the congressional subpoena in a Twitter Spaces chat. There are so many Twitter Spaces chats around that you may not have seen it because there are multiple ones going on at once. And who knows where, but it is possible to miss them. Anyway, Trading Secrets did not miss it. He heard about it and he talked about it, right? Congressional subpoena to talk about what's going on with MMTLP. That is quite interesting. FINRA, why did you pull this U3 halt? Why didn't you just issue the simple corporate action for shorts to close their positions before the company goes private? And if you don't close your positions, the positions would be closed for you. That would have been very simple. There would have been no extra shares out there. There would be reconciliation of shares. All that would be left are long shares, and that means that the long shares can go 1-for-1 into a private company. Bam, you're done. There would be no problem in trying to deliver these shares now. Why did you not do that? Instead, why did you go out of your way to pull an extraordinary event, U3, saying we cannot clear? You can clear if you did that. It's so simple. Now, if I can figure that out, FINRA can figure that out. They're the experts in this. They should have figured that out. There's supposed to be a bunch of, rocket scientists in there. So they should have been able to figure that out. In fact, they've figured out things like this before in the past. Why this time? Why? Why FINRA? Anyway, last week, I did not go over this, but I thought this was kind of interesting. Last week, I started hearing reports that Scotia iTrade, is valuing our next Brda hydrocarbons at $137 Canadian per share, which is something around $102 American per share, right? That's huge. People are talking about it, etc. What's going on? Well, Sean Go basically says, he just hung up the phone with his broker, and the broker said the value was assigned to their shares by the vendor. By the vendor, he basically means next Brda hydrocarbons, and he says, the value is assigned, that's interesting if it was assigned by next Brda hydrocarbons. But later on, it came out that, the dollar value went back to zero. They said, hey, it was just, it was a mistake. It was a glitch. Shouldn't have been there. It should have a $0 value. That's what they're saying, right? So, but I'm wondering, could this glitch have been a test, right? I think it might have been a test. Who knows? It might have been a test to see if $102.86 per share for next Brda hydrocarbons may or may not be acceptable to shareholders. I don't know. Maybe it's a test. Maybe they wanted to see what, our reactions would be. It's kind of interesting. It was up there for 3 days or so, and then it came back down to zero, right? Yeah, could be an interesting test. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now. Let me end by saying that I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is, of course, intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. There was a lot that happened. I think I covered most of it. In general, at the end of the week, I'm actually feeling more positive than I was at the beginning of the week. And I think a lot of info has come out, and I think the case is so open and shut now. Yeah. There was a lot more shenanigans than I knew about, that John Brda knew about, and that he told us about. And I'm so glad that he was able to disclose that information. So that is awesome. And a lot new information came out. Flamethrower, all that stuff. It's really cool. I think we're in pretty good shape. And that's all I have to say for now. I will make a video sometime later on. Of course, this is not my last video. And so I will catch you later. Until then, yeah, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. I'm not a legal advisor either. This is not legal advice. I think we're in good shape. Okay, goodbye.